With thanks to Johanna from UNIN for inviting us at the UN System Staff College here in Turin to join today's session, which is a continuation of a couple of sessions that we have undertaken looking at the UN Innovation Toolkit. I will begin today's session on the partnerships module of the toolkit. But Paula, thank you for joining us also. I know that you've just come from a meeting and you've just been launched into this. Would you like to kick us off?
Of course. First of all, we want to again share with you the team information. Here we have Barry McKinsey, the Learning Portfolio Manager, who is in charge of the innovation portfolio of the UN System Staff College, as well as Johanna Joachim, Manager of the UN Innovation Network, that I'm sure that you're all familiarized with, and myself, Paula de Blas, Associate Fellow, also working in the innovation portfolio. I see that Kirpal has raised the hand. If you want to ask any question, please feel free to do so. If not, we would be happy to ask you one question, which we will be starting today's session.
Now, I'm not sure if we have, the poll is up, so there you go.
Great.
Have you joined any of our UN Innovation Toolkit webinars so far? Let's have a look. Now, Johanna, can you hear us?
I can. I'm so sorry, Baron, to make you think that the problem was on your side. This is terrible.
I've been accused of worse, Johanna. That's no trouble at all.
All right.
And now we see that 78% of the people has voted. Okay, so great to see that the majority of you, 58%, actually joined another UN Innovation Toolkit webinar in the previous weeks. So that means that we don't have to recap as in depth as in the other webinars. If we go to the next slide, we are going to start with this recap. And the first feature of this UN Innovation Toolkit is its diagnostic. Some of you may know this diagnostic is composed of 27 questions that are formulated around the SPACE framework, the strategy, partnerships, architecture, culture, and evaluation models. And this diagnostic evaluates the user's team, unit, organization readiness to innovate. After you complete the 27 questions assessment, you are provided with an innovation profile with a description of the profile, strengths, areas of improvement of the profile, as well as a guidance. Then you're also provided with some detailed results on the SPACE framework with a percentage, as well as several justifications of the score that you have in each model. And we invite you to take this diagnostic. And if we pass to the next slide, we will also see the big picture of the UN Innovation Toolkit. We have already discussed the first feature of the UN Innovation Toolkit, its diagnostic. And we have commented the SPACE framework of the UN Innovation Toolkit and the 21 UN derived tools that the toolkit has are distributed on these 5 different models. And today, as Perrin has said before, we will be focusing on the partnerships model. And the tools are composed of step-by-step guidance, worksheets, as well as case studies from within the UN system. Now we want to share with you this QR code in case you will, as well as the link of the toolkit, in case you want to navigate through the toolkits with us through the presentation. We also want to share with you the Introduction to Innovation course. This Introduction to Innovation course was articulated, designed, and developed with the UN Innovation Toolkit. And it's a free course of the UN System Staff College that is available for all UN staff. So we also encourage you to take this course, and we are pleased to share with you here the QR code in case you're interested to join and to take this course. And now let's get into the partnerships model. The partnerships model, well, it's an important part of innovation. Why? Because partners can fill resource gaps generate innovation solutions, and maximize the overall success of innovation efforts in a programmatic or operational area. Therefore, a partnership is critical to innovate in a broader ecosystem. And if we pass to the next slide, we're going to see why do we need partnerships for innovation. Well, we are right now in for global development. Global development involves complex ecosystem of actors that sometimes have overlapping and in some cases competing interests. Therefore, making innovation successful requires organizations to engage with these other groups in order to avoid this type of situations and to maximize resources with these other actors. And if we pass to the next slide, why do we need innovations for partnership? The other side of the coin. Well, this process of partnering often involves non-traditional partners. That is to say, private sector entities, academic institutions, and government agencies. Organizations that have the ability to manage innovation efforts across these type of ecosystems will often find success that they could never achieve working in isolation. Therefore, innovation for partnerships and partnerships for innovation. And the most consistent innovative organizations have developed standardized approaches to effectively engage potential partners, identify synergies, and create joint value. Finally, why do we need the partnerships model? The partnerships model of the UN Innovation Toolkit has been created for you to understand how to communicate value to attract potential partners, to prioritize potential partnerships, to maximize shared value, to find new partners that provide unique value and effectively engage with them, as well as to manage and proactively mitigate risks associated with its partnerships. And now my colleague Berin will start introducing the 4 UN derived tools of the partnerships model.
Thank you very much, Paula. And yeah, I mean, this is exciting. Partnerships is one of the really exciting parts of the toolkit for me because they are so important, right? And particularly if we think about what the post-COVID landscape is going to look like, partnerships are only going to become more important. We are looking at, for the UN, we're looking at a lot of donor countries, at least, who have invested huge amounts of money internally in regards to propping up their own economies. We don't know how that's going to pan out. We don't know the timeline on that. We don't know what the impact is going to be on funding for international agencies, for aid, for example. Similarly, also, there is we have seen both the costs of a lack of partnership or inadequate partnering relationships in regards to some of the evidence that we've seen from COVID, but also we're seeing that there will be, certainly as far as I'm concerned, we're going to see much more of a focus on the need for partnerships and the need for better developed partnerships for more global cohesion, more global coordination, not just in regards to pandemics, but just in general. I think what it's also done, what the pandemic has also done, is thrown into relief some of the lack of partnership development that we have in regards to the 2030 agenda. And I think that it's only going to become more and more critical to partner better moving forward. One other element that I'm seeing also, and this is some conversations that we're seeing taking place around the toolkit, around the partnerships pillar of the toolkit, is not just external partnerships, not just discussions around what is our value proposition from an external point of view, how do we portray ourselves externally, but also when we look internally, even within an organization, within different teams, within different units, how is it that we can better partner across those? Some of these practices and processes that are highlighted in the toolkit, of course, are relevant for those discussions and those engagements as well. So for me, it's all about partnerships. And it's such a fascinating part of the process. Let's have a look at the tools, as was alluded to by Paula in the start there. One of the tools is this idea of defining a value proposition. Now, If you go online and look for innovation, this is going to come up, right? Defining the value proposition is one of the critical elements. There are some great tools out there. There are some awful tools out there. But this is one of the key benefits, one of the key outcomes of the UN Innovation Toolkit is that it provides a commonality of language and it provides a commonality of approach so that when you are engaging with your team, your unit or your organization, based on the diagnostic, based on the results of the diagnostic, the outcomes of that are aligned in regards to the language that is being used. So at least you can start to get baselines. And so this is one of the benefits that we see for the toolkit. Here, define a value proposition. So you're looking at not only defining what it is that you can bring to the table, but also how do you communicate that? How do you communicate this to different stakeholders? How do you communicate this internally? How do you communicate this externally? How is it that you tell your story? And you'll see in the tools there are links to other tools, including to the innovation storytelling tool. But if we have a quick look at this, we can see that the objectives of the Define the Value Proposition tool to develop clear, differentiated. Now, this is really important, differentiated value proposition statements, so that when you're talking to differing stakeholders, you are outlining your value proposition as it relates to them. It's not a blanket, it's targeted. And this is a critical part of that process. Clear, differentiated, and compelling value proposition statements to present and potential partners. I love this. Present and potential partners. How often do we go back to the partners that we already have and re-engage with them about our value proposition, reinforce what it is that we are bringing to that relationship and what we can do in the future? So I think this is a critical part of this process as well. Target and effectively communicate your value proposition to partners across private, social, and public spheres. Understanding that the private, social, and public sector may and often do have different hooks as to what is a value proposition. So really a chance for you to sit with yourself, a chance for you to sit with your team or your unit and understand who are our partners, how do we communicate more effectively what we can bring to a relationship with them. You'll see here that there are a number of steps. The sound of Baron is bad. It is plugged in. Let me see, is that? Yeah. Thank you. I will try and let me see if I can try and fix that up. Okay. Is the audio? Let me try something else.
It seems to be the day of audio issues, Baron.
I know, right? It's awful. Is this better?
It is a lot better, actually.
That's a lot better. Okay.
Thank you for flagging that.
Can you confirm that that's better for you as well? We'll see how we go. Okay, but if that's better, let's move on. So you can see in this session. Okay, super. Thank you so much for bringing that up. We can see here that there are these different elements within the tool. Now, each tool has this process. So it's got the objectives, where you're going to go. It's got before you begin what you need. So in relation to the to this Define Your Value Proposition tool, you'll need to identify your innovation goals and the type of partnership that may help you advance them. And then it also is encouraging you to complete the ecosystem analysis tool so that you're better able to understand your role within your broader innovation ecosystem. So this is one of the really cool things about the toolkit as well, is that while the tools are designed to stand alone, they are also designed to work in a web, in a network together. So you are able to get these kind of longer processes, which will give you more depth of information, more understanding as to your role, responsibility, and positioning in your innovation effort. So each tool has this outline as well. It outlines the steps that you will take. So in regards to the Define the Value Proposition tool, you will define your goals, you'll create a partner portrait to really understand who it is you're engaging with, develop meaningful and targeted value propositions, and then working to communicate that. So you can see these are those steps that you will undertake. There's also a worksheet included in there so that you can take a step back and you can plan each of these steps and processes with your team, with your partners. And then, of course, one of the great things about the UN Innovation Toolkit is that there are case studies. Now, these are UN-derived case studies. And one of the key things about the toolkit as well in the design process, which UN had such a huge amount to do with, was not just the sourcing of these case studies, but also the validation of the toolkit in general. Has gone through these processes with UN entities and UN partners, UN members, so that we can really present the best stories to present how this is worked in the real world. So in regards to the Define the Value Proposition tool, you can work to learn how UN Women has shaped their value proposition within the women's empowerment ecosystem. So steps and processes involved in there. We'll go a little bit deeper, finding different partners. So you can see here that this next tool helps organizations identify any new partners that can improve their innovation outcomes. For me, this is the tool of 2021. I think when we come out of COVID, if we're going to maybe 2021, 2022, but post-pandemic, this is going to be really, really important to see how is it that we can best work in this new environment to find different partners tool. The objectives of this tool: identify the characteristics of non-traditional partners that bring unique value, and find partners by considering new ways to interact and to engage with them. You'll see there the case study, again, UN Women, but working on blockchain solutions for refugees in Kenya. So some really interesting stuff in the Find Different Partners tool. The next tool that we have, Prepare to Partner. So again, you can see that these, even within the partnerships pillar of the toolkit, it's stepped. You're working as to what is my value proposition? How is it that I can identify new and different partners? And then that next step, what is it that I need to do to be able to prepare to partner? So this tool helps organizations design and manage their innovation partnerships more effectively, helping to identify and mitigate common risks associated with innovation partnerships. One of my other roles here at the UN System Staff College is designing executive management programming for generally P5 participants. It's a 6-month program, a number of different online modules, and then a workshop. We have an entire week devoted to partnership building. And one of the critical questions that we ask them, and gets a little bit uncomfortable at times, but that's where kind of the fun is asking them, how are you the problem? How is it difficult for people or agencies or entities to partner with you, with your team, with your unit, or with your organization? And this is part of this process as well, is that introspection to really ask, how am I the problem, so that I can understand from other people's points of view what it's like to partner with me, but also internally, how can I work to fix some of those issues or mitigate and address some of those issues? I see here from Matty a question: can you use the various modules independently, or do you need to implement them all consecutively? You do not need to implement them consecutively. They are designed to stand entirely alone. They are designed to be a process that you can undertake. They've got to start, they've got to finish. What I had mentioned was that within each of the tools, there are recommended other tools that you can access and that you can use, which will help you get a deeper understanding of your positioning, of the potential of the relationship or partnership, those sorts of things. So they are able to be used independently. You can then also, depending on time, social capital, political capital, financial capital, you can look to incorporate other elements as well. Prioritize and select partners. So this next step of the process as well. So prioritize and selecting helps you have a look at those potential partners that you have identified. Think about how they are best positioned to assist, and then really think about who are the best ones for me to engage with. We all work in a resource poor environment. We never have enough time, we never have enough staff, we never have enough money. And so sometimes it is important for us to take that step back and to really work on who is it best that we work with. It'd be great to work with everybody, but who is it best that we work with under the circumstances that we find ourselves? And then there are ways that you can work to select them. The objectives of the Prioritize and Select Partners tool is to establish a partnership evaluation framework so that you are able to really kind of get some sort of standardized approach to the selection process, and then, as it says here, effectively allocate resources dedicated to partnerships. Now, one of the critical things too, and really important when we talk about about partnerships is that when we talk about resources, we're not just talking about money. A lot of times people see resources simply as cash. It can be problematic because there are, particularly when we're talking about partnerships, social capital. How much is it that we can engage with partners based on our social engagements, on any social or political capital that we may have? Understanding that those are still finite resources, they still need to be allocated effectively and utilized effectively. This tool helps you consider those processes as well. If we have a look here, what is the case study for this one? Is the World Food Program. So a decision to partner with a global corporation to launch its Global Innovation Challenge for Zero Hunger. A lot of times we find, and this is some of the feedback we get from users of the toolkit as well, is that engaging with the private sector is difficult, can be difficult, and so this can help you undertake those internal discussions around pros and cons around that. If we just take a look at, before you begin, you will need to develop a clear understanding of the goals and list of potential partners. So again, you can see here, the second step, identify team members who can help collect insights on existing and potential partners for innovation. Even through these steps, you can see that you're taking this really big idea of prioritizing and selecting partners and breaking it down into smaller chunks, smaller units that you as an innovator, as a team member, as a team leader, as a team manager are able to design, structure, process, allocate, these roles and responsibilities. So it's kind of trying to break down these elements into what is it that we can do, how are we going to do it, what needs to come first, and then how do we communicate around that. So really interesting processes that are incorporated into these tools. The most popular tools in the partnership module are define a value proposition and find different partners. And so what I am going to do is to ask you to have a vote and let me know which one you would like to go a little bit deeper into.
And while colleagues are voting, Baron, I'm just going to take this moment and say a brief reminder, if you have any questions that you would like to ask Baron, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. It's a little bit easier to manage than questions in the chat. And we welcome them, of course, on the tool that is coming up, as well as any other tools or the toolkit in general. And I am keen to get at least 3/4 here. So we're at 71% voted. Come on, 4 more %. We can do this. Make up your mind. 73. One more person. Okay, there we go. Ending polling. Baron, what do you reckon? Which one is it going to be?
This is interesting. I have a feeling it's going to be value proposition because that's got name recognition. People have heard about this process.
You are good at this guessing game. Define a value proposition.
Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper into that. And to those of you who did vote for find different partners, understand that it is available, of course, on the toolkit at un-innovation.tools. It is pretty self-explanatory. There is, of course, a worksheet as well. But for the moment, let us go into define a value proposition. Whoopsie, there we go. We've already done that poll. I'm sorry. Okay, and here we are, define a value proposition. So I covered this a little bit at the start of the session, but we're looking here about defining and communicating a value proposition. And the reason I mentioned in that question that Johanna asked me, value proposition is one of those things that we hear about when people talk about innovation. It's something that is done often, but not often well, in my opinion. And in fact, I've worked a lot also in previous roles in regards to team development and team process planning. And what I have found in the past is that this idea of value proposition is often done looking internally. What is our value proposition internally? Which is a little bit of a miss, because we really need to be examining, well, what do we offer outside? What do we offer as potential partners? And how do we take that to those outside? So once again, let's have a look at the objectives: to develop a clear, differentiated, and compelling value proposition to target and effectively communicate this across a range of partners, private, social, and public sector. Understanding that how you communicate that is different. here, and this relates to the question that was asked by Meta as well, is that in this tool you can see that before you begin you'll need to identify your innovation goals, type of partnership that you wish to have to advance these goals, but then also it gives you it recommends the use of another tool that you can use to augment the findings to support the processes behind this tool as well. I had shared what the case study is, but we'll have a look at the steps that you'll take to find your partnership's goals and your unique value. Document your team's innovation goals. You then create this partnership portrait. You then develop this targeted value proposition, and you communicate that as well. Let's go a bit deeper into the steps that you will be taking. These are the recommended tools. As I had mentioned, there are a number of recommended tools that go in coordination or conjunction with the Define a Value Proposition tool. They don't have to be used together, but if you do, they lend a larger picture. They give you more depth in your planning. So the ecosystem analysis, it says to consider completing this so you can get a better understanding of your role within your innovation ecosystem, as well as understanding what your best partner is. Then you undertake the define the value proposition process. We've talked about the importance of undertaking the Scan the Horizon tool if you have the time to do that. And then finally, the innovation storytelling tool as well, so that you can understand how is it that you can share this? How is it you can tell stories about this? People remember much, much better. People feel more compelled to engage if you are sharing stories. And so there are processes, there are good practice incorporated in the innovation storytelling tool so that you can tailor your situation, so that you can tailor your story, so that you can tailor your value proposition to different partners as you engage with them. But if we come back to the tool, the first step within the Define a Value Proposition tool is to define your partnership goals, your unique value. The two types of partnerships that are presented in this tool, as it says here, needs-based partnerships from kind of a more strategic level. You understand what you need, you understand the processes, you find the partners to work with. The other one is more of an exploratory partnership. So let's see how we can work together, how we could work together. There may be areas of complementarity. What are we going to do about that? In order to help understand this better, you will undertake through this tool a partner value canvas. So you outline your goals, your resources, your needs, your values, and your roles, as well as those of your potentially your partner. What this does, and this is really one of the really cool things about the toolkit as well, is it encourages that perspective. It encourages that pause to say, hey, look, oftentimes we run into implementation, and that's two or three steps too far. Let's come back. Let's find time to pause. Let's find time to consider as an individual, but also as a team or a unit, whatever scope you wish to undertake this discussion from. Let's think about, what are our goals? What do we bring to this process? What are our needs? Let's talk about values. A chance then for that kind of deeper engagement, that deeper development of identity amongst your team or your unit. Then you can work on identifying what are called hidden assets, things that perhaps you hadn't considered but are relevant potentially to outside partners. And then you build your value proposition specifically around this. Now let's just have a look at the worksheet. This is the process. Now you'll see that this is, when you look at the tool, the partner Define a Value Proposition tool, this is the example used in the tool. So this is pre-completed here, but there is also a blank one available for you to download and to share with your partners, whoever it is, with the team that is undertaking this process, to really go through this process. What are we trying to do? Sit back, spend a little bit of time with your team, understand what is it that we're trying to do here. What role do we want to play? What do we have? What do we bring to this relationship? Where are the gaps? What are we missing? And then what are the team's hidden assets? So what is your team best at? Again, this is a chance for buy-in at a team level. This is a chance for better allocation of roles and responsibilities through this innovation process. So another step, a number of steps in this process that you can really get a deeper understanding of your team and of what you can bring. Step 2, create a partner portrait to help tailor your value proposition. So then we can work on this to define our target audience, We then create a portrait for each. Again, a really good team building exercise when we're working on team identity, when we're working on alignment of kind of understanding what do we perceive about our role, about our partners, about our teams. It's a really interesting process to go through to understand perhaps some of those differences, perhaps some of those assumptions that maybe you had around your team's role and those of your partners. So we have a look here at the worksheet, again, downloadable from the tool. So then we're looking here, partner portrait. Who is your target partner? What sector are they from? What is their background? So we can see here, they're a municipal government, low budget, low allocation to infrastructure. So we can see here that these are elements that are brought out through the toolkit. What does your target partner want? What are your target partner's current actions? What are your target partner's values? So again, just a chance for us to scope, a chance for us to test assumptions, and a chance for us to align across a team as to what it is that we are going to move forward with. Step 3, develop a meaningful and targeted value proposition. There are, and I'll come back to my comment that I made earlier on about value propositions not generally being done well. And the reason, in my opinion, and from what I have seen, is that generally value propositions are developed, they are neither meaningful nor targeted. And this is something that really is kind of a more difficult conversation to have, because it's about values, it's about what we can bring, and it needs to be really, really structured and really scoped in this discussion. So the worksheet that you will find in the toolkit is to put yourself in the position of your target partner. So again, asking that question, perhaps, how am I the problem? Highlight statements from your partner value canvas. So there's a link between what you've already developed, and then you can consider other options that may exist. This here is sharing what this looks like. So your partner value canvas, this is what you've already done. What are you trying to do? What role do you want to play? What do you have? What do you need? And what are your hidden assets? You then bring together the partner portrait, which you've already done. Who's your target partner? What sector are they in? What is their target? What is their background? Those sorts of things. And then you start thinking about the key statements that can link these things to what you bring and what the partner may bring as well. So that becomes much more of a targeted process. Step 4, we need to then, once we've developed this value proposition, we then communicate this. Now, critically, we communicate this to a specific audience. Now, I used to work, for example, I used to work in Japan. I used to work for a UN agency in Japan. We used to communicate a lot with government in Japan, and there were certain government agencies whereby their email system could not accept more than 2 attachments, and the attachments could not be more than ½ megabyte in size each. So that's a very small, very specific example of how you can technically communicate or not communicate to a stakeholder, because if you didn't know that and you sent 3 attachments, your email didn't go through. So we need to think more about, that's more technical, but we also need to be thinking about how is it, what is that hook for these partners? Now, you've identified what their needs are, you've identified what their interests are, you've identified what they can bring. So this is that chance to craft communication around what is interesting to them, what is relevant to them, what is going to be that hook to bring them into this engagement. You need to think about how your potential partner views you. Again, how am I the problem, for example? Are you speaking the same language? Now, that can be from a language point of view, but it can also just be from a perspective, from an understanding point of view. What is the nature of your innovation? How effectively are you grounding your message? Are you linking it to the needs that you have identified from their side? If, for example, you are communicating with a private sector company, maybe their focus is more on money lost, money gained, rather than if you are engaging with an NPO, for example. We need to be thinking about what is going to be relevant for them as well. Okay, so that is the end. I see that we are at 20 past. There is, this was the Find the Different Partners tool, the other most popular tool in the program, but I will leave the presentation there and I will open up to questions. So thank you. And Johanna, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Baron. Great presentations as always. Love the energy. 2 colleagues who are on the line. just a quick reminder that we are taking questions in the Q&A box, and we've got a couple in here already. Let me take the first one, and by an anonymous colleague, and they're wondering, are these tools for colleagues in partnership divisions or innovation teams? And what is your experiences on how that collaboration works? Do innovation teams generally manage their own partnerships, or do they collaborate with the partnerships team to get them on the ground? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And as usual, as I've done for the last 2 or 3 interventions, I don't have a satisfying response, because the answer is it depends. You know, realistically, the tools have been designed for anyone. The tools have been designed to be, if we go back to the diagnostic has been designed to be undertaken from a team, unit, or organization perspective. We find that about 60%, 62% of participants are in fact taking it from the level of a team, the viewpoint of a team. And so in general, what that is telling us, what we are inferring from that, and it's based on some discussions that we've also had with users of the toolkit, is that there is an understanding that innovation is something that I need to look at what I can do at my level. Oftentimes we find that innovation at an organizational level is much, much more difficult. It's perhaps decided on or designed at a higher level, and perhaps isn't communicated well, perhaps isn't constructed well, but people feel a distance from that. And so what we see is that people are taking the diagnostic from the viewpoint of the team and understanding, well, what can I do to innovate? Which I think is a really critical part of the process. And so to the question about other tools for colleagues in partnership division innovation teams, both. And it's a discussion, what I would suggest is that innovation teams and partnership teams take the diagnostic and then share results. And because then we get an understanding of what does innovation mean to different people, different teams, divisions within the same organization, even within the same team. You can have a very different understanding of what innovation can and should mean. Oftentimes, we still have people who see innovation as Tesla and big data and drones. Yeah, super cool. Really important stuff. Also, it's also about examining what we can do differently and what different things can we do to deliver on our mandate. And so, you know, this is something that I think needs to be scoped. I would encourage that a number of people take the diagnostic individually and then share their results. Certainly from a team member, team leader point of view, I would suggest that because you do have more control over that process, to undertake that, just so that you can get alignment on that level around what these tools can mean for us, what innovation can mean for us. Then it's a process of engaging 2 other entities within the same unit or organization and say, hey, look, we've undertaken this process. We have these results. This is what we've found. How about you take this as well, and we can cross, you know, we can share.
That's super important, Baron. This alignment is critical. If you don't have it at the beginning and start together on the journey, you're going to find out that, you know, you are actually going into completely opposite directions. So creating a common baseline understanding is absolutely critical. I agree. Because we don't just want to hear from me, I'm going to try and give our colleague Juan the floor. Juan is from UNICEF and I believe based in, oh, just clicked on the wrong Juan. Okay, Juan Mones from UNICEF, I believe based in Geneva. Welcome, Juan.
Hello, welcome, and thank you very much. Thank you, Verin, for a very nice presentation, and this is definitely an incredible resource for all of us trying to drive innovation in our organizations. While I was listening to you, I saw that there was missing a moment where you actually agree on what are your team priorities or your organization priorities, and then from there you start mapping, working on your value proposition, and because I guess you can have different value propositions depending on which area you are prioritizing, right? So basically, what is your recommendation on that step? I mean, where you should start? Over.
That's super important. I'm actually opening the toolkit at the moment, and perhaps you know, perhaps can share my screen. Well, it's an excellent question here. Let me share this. So if you can see here, we've got these are the tools that open up when you go through the process. The recommended tools are based on your diagnostic, but you can see under the different pillars of the toolkit: strategy, partnerships, which we've been looking at today, architecture, culture, and evaluation. The priority discussion kind of comes under strategy as well, because we're looking at what is our innovation plan, what is our strategy. We've looked at ecosystem analysis. So that's trying to understand where do we stand in this ecosystem in which we kind of live, in which we exist. And so I think there is a priority discussion there. But I agree, during the value proposition phase, there should also be a time, and I think it would probably come during that process of discussing what can we bring, and then kind of what does this relation look like, is based on our resources, what are the priorities here? Now, it's not just a resources discussion. I understand that. It's also about mandate. It's also about doability. It's also about scope, those sorts of things. But I think at that stage, when you're really understanding what do we as a team bring, I think then also it would be an opportune time to discuss priorities. Johanna, any thoughts on that?
No, I was going to ask what Juan thinks about that.
Yeah, Juan. Absolutely.
No, I said thank you very much.
Great. Seems to resonate. So I'm going to give the floor to our newest UN member, Soledad from UNDP. I think just joined this morning. Welcome, Soledad, with the UNDP's Accelerator Labs based in New York, I believe. Soledad, you had a question for Beren.
Hi, thank you for giving me the floor. I thought it was only chat. Thank you so much.
I will try and make it interactive.
No, this is a great presentation. I actually just joined the network, so this is great. And thank you so much for those, it's like, for us, it's relating much in all the work we're doing day to day. So fantastic to be part of the network. No, my question is just if, as part of the training package and the toolkit, do you have specific information and training on the storytelling? Because storytelling, in particular, when we are working with complex solutions, right, or technology, is a little bit difficult. So if you have any toolkit or information to help us to work on specific storytelling for innovation, that would be great. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, look, I do is the exciting response. This is one where I can give a structured response to. So thank you for your question, and of course, welcome to the UN. If I can welcome people on your behalf, Johanna. But look, the storytelling element of innovation, absolutely critical, and particularly when we're tying to value propositions, for example, because we understand what we can bring to the relationship, but how is it that we can share with oftentimes a diverse array of potential partners what it is that we can bring. And that's just the start of the process. We also need to be sharing results, we need to be sharing failures, we need to be sharing successes, we need to work out how we can tell stories around this. So to your question, Soledad, in the evaluation pillar of the toolkit, which is down here at the bottom, I'm sharing my screen, you'll see that we have in fact a specific tool on innovation storytelling, which I will open up, and you can see here that the key elements of the tool are to tell your organization or a team's innovation story in a way that resonates with target audiences, draws attention to your ideas, and captures sustained interest, and then also increases stakeholder support, buy-in, and excitement. If we have a look at the tool, we can open it up here and we can see that the steps that you will take, which I will highlight: develop a compelling theme for your story. So what is the conclusion that we want people to walk away with? What is it that we want them to hear? And then we need to also understand the unique characteristics of that audience. Now this is where the fun part of the toolkit is as well, because the insight that you gained from your prioritized partners, from your partner identification process ties into this. You will have a depth of understanding around that as well. So what are their unique characteristics? What are their needs? What are their preferences? How do they receive communication? And then choosing the appropriate storytelling method and channel. There's a number of methods or channels that are identified there. And then thinking also about the frequency of communications. And this is one of those, oftentimes I've worked with teams on this matrix of stakeholders as to interest versus influence over any relationship. And in each of those quadrants, you're going to understand how often you need to communicate. Some stakeholders, some partners really only need to be kept informed of processes, Whereas if they have a high influence, high interest over the project, they're going to need to be much more involved. They get perhaps they're on boards and that sort of thing as well. So just thinking about the frequency of communication based on where they stand, what kind of partner they are, is an important part of this process. UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund, obviously has shared the case study there. But look, this is the tool, and this is, again, Solid, thank you for your question, because we're seeing the steps, we're seeing the guidelines that are incorporated into each of these steps for you to consider with your teams. There is the step in action so that you are able to understand. Here you can see key points, the points of interest, the list of stakeholders, what characteristics they have, and what the response could or should be. So all of these processes that are incorporated here. This one was interesting as well, because this is how you present your information, whether it's through an infographic, whether it's through a comic or a sketch note. We've found a lot of use here in the college around live sketchnoting and sharing that with participants at the end of a session. Articles or blogs, written reports, which, you know, there's too many written reports, videos, you know, meetings, presentations, those sorts of things. So really thinking about how is it that you can get this information across, communicate this. And then we have an example here from Vanuatu and UNICEF. So
Darren, if I may come in briefly, because Soledad, you thought that was helpful already. I think you're going to find it even more helpful when I tell you that the case study in this tool actually comes from UNICEF and was developed by Angie Ong, who's now the communications lead at the Accelerator Lab. So it's the colleagues who put you in touch with us is actually the one who helped draft that case study.
Fantastic.
So if you have, it's a nice coincidence, isn't it?
Small world.
It is a tiny world. So happy connecting there, and I'm glad you find it useful. Welcome to the network.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you, Baron.
No,
We're now going. We have a mystery question. I don't usually do this. There's just a raised hand from Nagina from UNFPA.
Okay.
So welcome to the network, Nagina. You should be able to speak.
Yep. Hello, and thank you very much for this presentation. I'm also a newly joined member, and
Welcome.
I'm really happy to be part of it. My question is about where can we maybe find or create a platform where we can learn from other agencies about the unusual partnerships, because as UN, we're all facing certain challenges in terms of bureaucracies and rules to partner with some non-traditional partners in a different way, in a different modalities, which are outside of the stick to rigid rules. So, and I'm sure that there are already a number of a wealth of good examples and best practices how others were able to overcome it and came up with innovative modalities for partnership to bring in new long-standing, sustainable collaboration. So I think that would be useful. Maybe it already exists and I'm not aware, or we can bring it in so we can learn from each other and share our experiences, how to bring this partnership to a new level, to come from the status quo to something very different if needed and possible. Thank you.
Super important question, and Johanna, I believe you. I mean, I wonder if you have a response to this. I just wanted to highlight from the UNSSC side, we are in the process of designing learning around the toolkit. We have finalized the introduction to innovation, which was introduced at the start of this webinar. So that is a free course on our Blue Line platform, open to anybody to access. Linking to that, we are finalizing the design of an introduction to the innovation toolkit learning module, and then also we will be designing modules on each of the SPACE pillars. Now, as part of that, there will be introductions to the tools, but there will also be a specific, although admittedly passive, forum available to users of those modules to share stories, pose questions, seek advice, that sort of thing. We will also be linking that to the further development of the toolkit, and so asking for it. To your point, what are some unusual partnerships? Some things that you had not considered, perhaps, that had developed and were successful, or were not, and what can we learn from that? So that is something that is being undertaken from the UNSSC side. We are looking to launch those modules towards summer. We're just putting the final touches on some of the design, but that's what we can offer from the staff college side. Johanna, are you aware of anywhere else that's sharing this sort of information?
Not actually. I'm aware of like efforts to collect partnerships in some more niche areas. So in the human-centered design space, potentially, we've recently done a blockchain partner mapping.
Okay.
We're going to do one on behavioral science soon, but like an overarching broader partner mapping or platform, I haven't seen and I'm not aware. It's an interesting question indeed, Nagina. We're going to not going to create that platform, but we're soon going to launch a Teams channel, and we're hoping that that could lead to an easier access to colleagues across the system to ask questions like this and help source answers. But currently, I'm afraid I don't have any insights in that either. Mette, for the last question of the day, I believe Mette is with the ILO in Geneva. Would you like to ask before we wrap up for the day?
Thanks, Joanna. Can you hear me? Good. No, it's thanks for the session today. I think these different tools towards partnership search and also the preparatory work that needs to go into it is quite interesting, and I look forward to diving deeper in. But I was just wondering, how long would you say the various modules take to implement? And if you'd say that you were in sort of a tight time constraint, which would be the ones that you really had to do, in your opinion? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super question, and it's going to have such an infuriating response. It depends. And I apologize for that, but it depends on the scope. It depends on the scope of, you know, if it's within a smaller team, this is something that can be done over a few weeks, over a few discussions, some sort of, you know, a structured engagement. If it's a larger, more diverse, perhaps dispersed team, then perhaps it's going to take a little bit more time. We also need to kind of think about the context of that partnership. If it's an internal partnership, then there's going to be smaller, there's going to be less need for some of not less need, that's incorrect. There's going to be less complexity in regards to what the discussions are, for example, around a value proposition. Whereas if we take it up to a larger level with a number of external and internal stakeholders, then really defining where you fit in this process can take a lot of time, because also during this process, as I mentioned, there's an awful lot of challenging assumptions that goes on. So the first step is actually to get all those assumptions out. And that takes a bit of time, depending on the trust within teams, depending on the psychological safety that may or may not exist. That can take time. So not a super helpful response, but in regards to what needs to be done first, or what is the most important of these, I would suggest that it's probably defining a value proposition, because from that you can then work to find different partners, because you understand what you bring, and so that's an easier process. You can then prepare to partner, because then you understand what you bring, you understand what you need and what you are looking for, and then prioritizing and selecting partners is the same process as well. You're looking for the gaps rather than, you know, trying to work out where you fit. So I would suggest that undertaking a structured, open and scoped value proposition, the definition of value proposition process is probably the most important part. And the reason that I say scope is because a lot of it depends on trust, and a lot of it depends on psychological safety. And so if at your start point you can't have that psychological safety for there to be an open and honest discussion around this, perhaps it needs to come down to a level within your team, within your closer team, whatever it is, to actually undertake that, and then to perhaps communicate out as to, hey, this is the process we've been under. Where does this stand in regards to the larger team unit, organizational mandates, those sorts of things? So it's a super interesting, super important process, but realistically, it depends on your context. Over.
It always depends. Thanks, Baron. And Mette, I'm not sure if you joined the previous webinars, but if you're looking for guidance or advice on prioritizing modules in the toolkit overall, obviously the diagnostic is a great place to start, right? So this could be in the partnership space. That's a good prioritization that Baron gave you. But the problems might not actually be in the partnership space. Maybe you should be looking at evaluation or culture first. The diagnostic is just a fantastic resource to help you understand where a good entry point to the journey is. So thanks for the question, and thank you, Baron. We are out of time, but this shall not be the last time we see you, because we're back in 2 weeks with the next module. What's coming up, Baron?
The next module, going with our SPACE framework. We've looked at strategy, we've looked at partnerships. Next time we'll be looking at architecture, and this is looking at scanning the horizon, user-centered design from pilot to scale, as well as thinking about operating models when we're developing our innovation interventions. So a fun session. Architecture is fun.
Architecture is fun indeed. Looking forward to that. But partnerships was also great fun and super important, as you said. Thank you for taking us through this. Such a pleasure to have you.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks to everyone who joined.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you to everybody. Thank you, UNIN. Thank you, Johanna, for the opportunity again. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the Staff College. Thank you.
Thanks, Baron. Wishing everyone a good day. See you soon. Bye-bye.